Outside the door, a servant called out rudely.
Madeline, Mrs. Margaret wants to see you downstairs.
Oh, got it.
Madeline blinked her sleepy eyes, frowning slightly in dissatisfaction.
Then hurry up, don't keep Mrs. Margaret waiting.
The servant left with a tone that could only be described as nasty.
Darn it.
After hearing the footsteps fade away, Madeline cursed softly. She was used to this kind of disrespect. As the so-called eldest daughter-in-law, she was nothing more than a figurehead. 3 years ago, Michael, the eldest son of the Edward family, became comatose due to a car accident. Edward heard somewhere that getting married could dispel bad luck and might help Michael wake up sooner. The Edward family was one of the most prestigious families in City A, with a high reputation. But when it came to finding a bride for the comatose Michael, all those socialites who used to follow him around vanished without a trace. In the end, the Edward family had to offer a high dowry to find a bride, and Madeline married into the family for that dowry. The current Mrs. Margaret was a second wife. It was said that Edward's first wife suffered from severe sadness and ended her life. The second son, James, was born to Mrs. Margaret and Edward. Now that Michael was in a coma, Madeline, as the eldest daughter-in-law, naturally wasn't taken seriously.
Oh well, I was only in it for the money, nothing else mattered.
Madeline threw off the covers and got out of bed, glancing at the man beside her with a self-mocking smile.
For 10 million, sacrificing my youth, it was worth it, especially since it could cure my brother's illness.
After a quick wash, she braced herself and walked out the door, ready for a battle. Helen calling her could only mean trouble. Just as she closed the door, the man on the bed moved his fingers slightly.
Oh, Helen, what do you need from me?
Madeline walked down the stairs in high heels, swaying her hips, with a smile as fake as ever. If marrying into the Edward family taught her anything besides getting money, it was how to be two-faced. Especially when dealing with Helen and her son, she could handle it with ease.
Emily, the David family sent an invitation. Their youngest son is getting married. You should attend on behalf of the Edward family.
As Madeline approached, Sophia handed her a red invitation. Seeing the name David made her pupils contract, and she clenched her fists slightly. She was sure Sophia did this on purpose to embarrass her. David was her boyfriend from college. He pursued her for over a year, and they were together for almost 3 years. She thought they would get married after graduation, but his family refused to let her in because she had no background and they thought she was beneath them. It made sense. The David family was also a prominent family in City A, and they had high standards for their daughters-in-law. Madeline still remembered the feeling when David's older brother placed a $5 million check in front of her. It was a disgusting transaction, and the worst part was, she had no choice but to accept it. Her brother urgently needed a bone marrow transplant, and $5 million was not a small amount. With tears in her eyes, she took the check, put it in her bag, and then deleted all contact with David, disappearing from his life. Rumor had it that David was heartbroken and fell ill for 3 months, then became a regular at nightclubs. So this invitation, does it mean the prodigal son has finally settled down? He must have found true love.
Sure.
Madeline smiled and took the invitation, feeling its texture.
This is nice, but not as good as Christopher's and my invitation.
Of course, the David family is just a small family.
Sophia said meaningfully, and Madeline knew she was thinking, how can they compare to the Edward family? If not, she wouldn't have married into the Edward family. In the end, she and Madeline were the same kind of people, with the same goals, if not the same methods.
All right, go get ready for tonight's event.
Sophia patted Madeline's hand and swayed her slender waist as she went upstairs.
TSK, TSK.
Watching her seductive figure, Madeline couldn't help but marvel. She had maintained herself well over the years, looking no older than 30. Madeline grabbed her bag and drove her Maserati to the largest mall in City A, representing the Edward family at a wedding. She couldn't afford to look cheap. In this mall, she was a VIP in every store, and all the staff knew her, mainly because the mall was owned by the Edward family. Even if the family didn't respect her, they had to give her face outside. No one dared to treat her poorly. Apart from having a husband who couldn't fulfill his duties, Madeline felt her life was quite comfortable. Madeline found a boutique she liked and picked the most expensive red evening gown. The backless design showed off her fair skin, and the side slit revealed her long legs. She let her chestnut curls fall over her shoulders and styled them simply.
Madeline, do you prefer a redder shade or a pinker one?
The makeup artist pointed to a row of lipsticks. Madeline glanced at them and chose her favorite red. This red always made her look vibrant, and she needed that strong aura. Looking at the woman in the mirror, she smiled in satisfaction.
Attending my ex-boyfriend's wedding, I have to be the most dazzling woman there.
Even if David hated her, she wanted to appear radiant and show him that she was doing well. Much later, she realized this was a sign of insecurity. Because I always felt guilty towards him, I wanted to arm myself externally to fill my inner void. Well, since I chose this path, there is no turning back.
Madeline, please get in the car.
After leaving the mall, the driver was already waiting downstairs. I usually dislike having someone drive me, but attending such an event, it wouldn't make sense to drive myself. Face is still important. Perhaps since coming to the Edward family, I have also learned vanity. The wedding was held at the Imperial Hotel, known as the top star-rated hotel in City A. Even in the nearby cities, the Imperial is one of the best. Anyone who can hold an event at the Imperial is undoubtedly a billionaire. At that time, it was here that I married the living dead, Christopher. In front of the entrance were the newlyweds' wedding photos. When I saw David's eyes, my heart still fluttered. Clutching my purse tightly, I pretended to be calm as I handed over the invitation, instructed the driver to deliver the gift, and then walked into the hall with a seductive stride. I came here not only to attend the wedding but also to get close to various distinguished individuals. Of course, I had to use my title as the Edward family's Madeline. Not for anything else, just to make money. In the past 3 years, I used the money from the Edward family to start a small company, registered under my brother Ethan's name. However, he is bedridden, and I handle the company's affairs in secret. Anyone attending this wedding is either wealthy or noble. I can definitely charm a few CEOs. Sure enough, after sitting with a glass of champagne for just a few minutes, several wealthy young men surrounded me. With just a glance, I could estimate their net worth and match them with the information in my mind.
Madeline.
Call me Emily.
All right, Emily. Here's to you.
He was Robert, the second son of the Lee family, born to the legitimate wife. It is said that his elder brother wanders outside all year round, uninterested in the family business, and he helps his father manage it. He is also the most likely future heir. I heard that our company recently had a big deal wanting to collaborate with the Lee family but hadn't been finalized.
Sure.
I smiled charmingly and drank a glass of wine, my mind already calculating. The other young men, seeing my straightforwardness, also toasted me one by one. I accepted each toast, but the amount I drank depended on their net worth. Secretly, a hand seemed to appear on my waist. Glancing sideways, it was Robert.
What's the rush? The night is still young.
He smiled silently, but his eyes shone with desire. Why, as the Edward family's Madeline, do I always attract unwanted attention? It's because they all know my husband is a living dead who can't fulfill his duties. I use this fact to lure many people into cooperation. For me, it's just a matter of mutual benefit. They covet my beauty, and I covet their wallets. After the cooperation, we go our separate ways, not disturbing each other. This is a hidden rule of high society. People appear decent, but the deals they make behind the scenes are more disgusting than sewers. I have been adapting, even learning to surpass.
Oh, isn't this the Edward family's Madeline, Emily? Emily what?
Suddenly, several pairs of white legs appeared in front of me, accompanied by mocking words. I remained calm, took a sip of champagne, and slowly looked up. Sure enough, it was them. Jessica and Lily, the sisters from the Kim family, and Olivia, the daughter of the Sia family. These three are the most famous three musketeers in the socialite circle of City A. Wherever they go, chaos follows, and no one can have peace. Interestingly, Robert withdrew his hand from my waist and stood up abruptly. Oh. I forgot, Jessica is already engaged to him.
Brother-in-law, what kind of taste do you have? How can you fancy such a woman?
Robert, if you don't give me a reasonable explanation today, see what I'll do.
Egged on by Lily, Jessica felt she couldn't save face. They have no real feelings for each other. Although they are engaged, they usually play their own games. If it weren't for the fact that the person involved was me, Jessica wouldn't care.
Miss Kim, I think you must have misunderstood. Mr. Lee and I were just discussing business cooperation, nothing more.
Easy for you to say. Does discussing business require touching your waist?
That's even more of a misunderstanding. You must have seen it wrong, just a matter of angle.
I maintained the most polite smile, calmly making it impossible for her to find fault. I had long since learned to filter out her sarcasm and insults. Over the years, I've heard more gossip than I've eaten meals.
Yes, just a matter of angle.
Robert also explained, and I saw a layer of sweat on his forehead. In comparison, the Lee family probably needs this marriage alliance more than the Kim family. Robert's status in front of Jessica is slightly lower. I looked down on his posture, but thinking about the business tonight, I endured it.
Do you think I'll believe a few casual words?
Jessica, provoked by her sister, clearly didn't want to let it go. But from her panicked eyes, I could see she didn't know how to continue, just venting her anger. This reassured me.
Jessica, I think it's just a misunderstanding.
At this moment, Olivia, who had been silent, spoke up. Olivia is not an ordinary person. She was one of Christopher's suitors back then, claiming she would marry no one but him. But after Christopher became a vegetative state, she disappeared from his side. Later, there were rumors about her with several young men, but I didn't pay much attention. Now she was actually speaking up for me, and I couldn't help but look at her a few more times. So kind? What happened to being lifelong rivals? When I married Christopher, she came to make trouble for several days. Sure enough.
Speaking of which, Robert and Jessica just got engaged. Shouldn't Madeline express something for causing such an unpleasant incident?
Olivia spoke slowly, her eyes full of cunning. Damn, I knew she wasn't that kind. At the wedding, several young men around me joined in the excitement.
How about Miss Olivia giving a suggestion?
I've heard the lady of the Edward family has a good tolerance for alcohol. How about 3 full glasses?
That's a good idea.
Yes. Drink up.
Surrounded by noise, many young people gathered to watch the fun. Some enthusiastic ones had already poured the wine for me.
3 glasses to dismiss me? No way, at least double it.
I guessed the crowd had emboldened Jessica, otherwise, she wouldn't dare challenge me directly. In the middle of the crowd, I saw a vague yet familiar figure, and my heart skipped a beat. I nodded almost involuntarily.
Miss Jessica, I'll drink 3 glasses to bring you good luck, ensuring you and your partner a long and happy life. But if it's doubled, I can't guarantee the effect.
My tone turned much colder, but my peripheral vision kept glancing at that familiar figure.
Just 3 glasses.
Robert, seeing my displeasure, tugged at Jessica's sleeve, signaling her to quickly resolve the matter. Anyone who embarrassed me would be going against the Edward family. I picked up the glass and drank it all in one go. The initial taste was sweet and refreshing, but the aftertaste was strong, almost making me cry. Determined not to lose face, I finished it.
These few glasses are nothing to me.
But today, for some reason, after 2 glasses, I felt a bit dizzy. As I raised the 3rd glass, cheers erupted around me, and some bold ones even whistled, turning the wedding banquet into a nightclub.
Stop drinking.
Suddenly, someone grabbed my wrist, causing the glass to spill all over him. I looked up and was petrified. It was none other than today's groom, David.
Everyone, disperse. There's nothing to see.
A few managers followed him, dispersing the crowd. Robert had also left with Jessica. But Olivia, before leaving, gave me a hateful glare.
Thank you, long time no see.
He just looked at me with deep, complex eyes. Feeling more embarrassed, I broke free from his hand and sat back, not daring to meet his gaze.
Are you satisfied with your position as the lady of the Edward family?
Not bad.
Ha!
Perhaps he didn't expect me to be so shameless. He was stunned for a moment, then chuckled dryly and shook his head, sitting beside me.
Back then, my brother said.
Your brother was right. He saw correctly. I am that kind of woman, unworthy of you.
I still smiled brightly, as if I wasn't talking about myself.
Even if I hadn't taken that 5 million, I still couldn't be with him.
Emily.
Today is your wedding day. Let me toast you in advance.
He wanted to say more, but I interrupted him, then picked up a glass of wine from the table and drank it all.
There's no need for this.
He grabbed my wrist, his emotions a bit out of control.
I know you did it for your brother's illness. You could have told me. I would never have stood by and done nothing.
David, let the past be the past. I wish you happiness.
I smiled, pried his hand away, and stood up to leave.
Emily. Don't you understand my feelings by now?
He pulled me, causing me to fall into his arms. Smelling his familiar scent, I almost lost control.
I don't want to understand.
You.
His brows furrowed deeply, probably angered by me. I thought that was the end, but then David's overwhelming kiss greeted me.
Are you crazy?
I pushed him, but it was futile. Seeing my dress getting wrinkled, I became scared.
David! I am now Christopher's woman.
He seemed to freeze. Taking the chance, I hurriedly got up and fled. I couldn't attend this wedding anymore.
Madeline, are you okay?
I'm not feeling well. Might be an asthma attack, and I didn't bring my medicine. Let's go home quickly.
I lied casually. The driver, hearing this, didn't dare delay and sped away from the imperial capital. Through the rearview mirror, I saw David standing at the door, looking desperate.
I wish you happiness. A woman like me doesn't deserve you.
Representing the Edward family at a wedding, I couldn't afford to look cheap. In this mall, I was a VIP in every store, and all the staff knew me, mainly because the mall was owned by the Edward family. Even if the family didn't respect me, they had to give me face outside. No one dared to treat me poorly.
Apart from having a husband who couldn't fulfill his duties, I felt my life was quite comfortable.
I found a boutique I liked and picked the most expensive red evening gown. The backless design showed off my fair skin, and the side slit revealed my long legs. I let my chestnut curls fall over my shoulders and styled them simply.
Madeline, do you prefer a redder shade or a pinker one?
The makeup artist pointed to a row of lipsticks. I glanced at them and chose my favorite red.
This red always made me look vibrant, and I needed that strong aura.
Looking at the woman in the mirror, I smiled in satisfaction.
Attending my ex-boyfriend's wedding, I had to be the most dazzling woman there. Even if David hated me, I wanted to appear radiant and show him that I was doing well.
Much later, I realized this was a sign of insecurity. I knew this was the biggest provocation to a man.
Heh, I murmured, knowing this was undoubtedly the greatest stimulation. But honestly, after lying in bed for 3 years, I really didn't know if he still.
Then let me show you. He stared into my eyes, his harsh words making my heart skip a beat.
Brother, I was wrong. Please let me go. I was just joking with you.
Although I had been with many men, I still had principles. Compared to me, Christopher was a stranger. Even though we had a legal marriage certificate, we were only nominally husband and wife.
Boss, I'll call you boss, okay? When did you wake up?
You don't need to know. He glanced at me coldly.
You bastard! Let go of me! I can report you! I screamed at the top of my lungs!
I'd like to see how a legal wife reports her husband. He sneered.
He made me feel humiliated. This was purely punishment, revenge. But why? Just because I married him?
Why do you know everything I do? I finally couldn't hold back my anger when I returned to the bedroom one day. I grabbed his neck and questioned him fiercely.
Are you crazy?
Yes, you drove me crazy. These days, you ruined several of my business deals, and I was struggling to gather my brother's surgery fees.
You better behave, or your brother's life will be in danger. He warned in a low voice.
You, despicable.
You are lowly. He retorted unceremoniously.
3 years had passed. Although I wore a glamorous exterior, it couldn't hide the fact that I was lowly.
Then we are really well matched. I laughed out loud, still pretending not to care about anything.
Knock knock. He wanted to say something but was interrupted by a knock on the door.
Come in.
After lunchtime, a male servant would come to clean Christopher's body.
All right, just leave the things here and stand aside. I'll do it myself today. If anything is wrong, tell me.
Is this how it's done? I directly soaked the towel in hot water and placed it on Christopher's leg. I was sure it would leave a blister.
Despite the high temperature, he didn't react at all.
Madeline, that's not how it's done. You need to test the temperature on yourself first.
I pretended to be careless and followed his instructions to clean Christopher. It wasn't perfect, but with the servant's presence, Christopher didn't suffer too much. After I finished wiping, the servant respectfully retreated with the basin. As soon as the door closed, I felt a sharp pain in my wrist.
Having fun?
I looked up to see Christopher's face close to mine, his eyes flashing with danger. For a moment, I felt a bit terrified. After all, every time he wanted to torment me these past few days, he had this look in his eyes.
What do you want to do?
What do I want to do? You beast. Bastard. Do you believe I won't expose the fact that you've already woken up and recovered?
I spoke defiantly, but I didn't want to struggle anymore. After so many days, I understood it was futile. Forget it, just consider it being bitten by a dog. The days that followed were relatively peaceful. Christopher pretended to move his fingers and legs, and finally chose an auspicious day to fully wake up. With his awakening, the Edward family's dynamics changed. William, being always careless, naturally had no chance of becoming the heir, and Helen also kept her mouth shut. I became the rightful mistress of the Edward family. The unwanted admirers around me disappeared overnight, my small company thrived, and my brother's condition improved. Everything was moving in a positive direction. Of course, even today, although I am pregnant with Christopher's child, he still hasn't told me when exactly he woke up. However, I am too lazy to ask anymore. Besides money, nothing else concerns me. The end.